warm welcome to Yarning with Bea. I'm Beatrice and I love a good yarn, both figuratively and literally. So on this channel I'll be talking about two of my favorite subjects, knitting and books, but not at the same time. So I'll be starting off with an episode of what I'm going to call Bea's Knits. On this segment, Bea's Knits, I'll be talking about all things yarn and knitting related that I am working on at the moment, that I'm thinking about, and that I am inspired by. I also, of course, really hope to inspire you and myself to try out new techniques and in other ways just develop creatively through knitting and the possibilities that knitting creates. My first feature topic today is going to be colors and color combinations. I myself am not very confident combining colors, and I'm so impressed by designers who can really create beautiful pieces by putting together colors, sometimes which I wouldn't think would go together. And of course, many designers are also really skilled in developing colors in their own yarn ranges, and that's really one of the things I'll be picking up on today, because in December I had the immense pleasure of having one of Kate Davis's Color Compass Advent calendars. She sells her Color Compass also now that it's not Advent, but it was such a pleasure to open a skein of yarn every day between the 1st and the 24th of December, and just see how varied her colors are in the yarn range Milwaukee Tweed, and kind of imagine every day what her intended plans were for us knitters with these little balls of yarn. I'll show you what they look like. This is the size, it's 25 grams in each ball of yarn. So, what is it? 24 skeins, so it's 600 grams of yarn in total. It's her Milwaukee Tweed range, which is 70% wool and 30% mohair. And it has these beautiful little tweedy, you can't see it very clearly in this color, but in some of them it's very, very clear. Like in this one, foxglove, beautiful. You can see the color variations in different parts of the little ball. So the yarn really comes alive, and it looks really tempting in its box when the balls lie together. So one of the things with the Color Compass Advent calendar was that we didn't know from the start was what the intention was with the balls of yarn, and it was promised that we would be able to make one full garment with the yarn that we received and at least 2 accessories. But we didn't have the patterns or anything, so that was released on the 24th, on Christmas Eve. And the patterns were not really what I had expected. Kate Davis's designs, if you're familiar with her, she works a lot with yoke sweaters and yoke cardigans. But the intention for this really full range of colors was that we would be able to learn how to play with colors ourselves and combine them in different ways, which was so much fun. I spent most of Christmas Day just putting these colors together and trying to find a combination that really I felt satisfied with, and I felt reflected the best that I could make out of the colors in the box that I had received. And like I said, I'm really not a confident person when it comes to color combinations, and I'm so fair, not to say pale, that I usually choose very light colors or pastel colors. And the colors in the color compass box were, well, there were some light colors, of course. We have a light gray, we have the one that I showed you before, a really nice light blue, some pinks, but basically these light colors didn't make up enough of the balls of yarn to make a full garment with, because there is so little in each ball, 25 grams, to make the cardigan that I chose. There was one cardigan pattern, one sweater pattern, and then a few smaller patterns with a shawl, a pillow cover, a cowl, and what's it called? Half mittens. So for the cardigan that I chose to make, it's called, what was it called? Posset. It's called the Posset cardigan. I'll show you in a little bit. I've come quite far on it. But basically I had to choose 16 of my 24 colors to make it work. I'm a size medium, but I'm quite tall, so I wanted to make it a little bit longer than the original pattern because I don't really like cropped cardigans, so I had to add an extra color. So basically the light colors were there just weren't enough of them. So one of the suggestions in this very long booklet for the color compass was to put a sheet on the ground and just take out all the balls of yarn and play around with them and see what you felt like. So I created a few different palettes, and I know that I was really supposed to swatch all of them, but I was afraid the yarn wouldn't last. So I didn't cut the yarn off, and I just ripped back my swatch when I was done, and it was really tangly, so I just swatched the one that I liked the best. So I'll show you how the full palette looked like and my different palettes and the one that I ultimately chose.
Here's the full range of colors of Milwaukee tweed that I received in my advent calendar before I started to use the balls of yarn. I tried to arrange them here in a very harmonious way, and as you can see, it's a super fun range of colors to work with. So this was the first palette that I created, which is inspired by the archipelago on the west coast of Sweden. I really love the shifting colors of the ocean and the cliffs, and on the right side of the palette it's also a little hint of sunset over the sea and perhaps some of the wildflowers that you can see in the summer. I really liked this palette, but ultimately I felt that it used up all of the blues in my selection, and it was not my favorite. The second palette that I created, I called Midwinter. It was, after all, Christmas Day when I was creating these different palettes, and I can see that the lighting in this photo is not ideal, but I hope you can get a general idea of what it looks like. I like the combination of colors, but considering the beautiful and bright colors that were included in the color compass, I wanted to incorporate more of those colors, so I kind of just made this one, looked at it, enjoyed it, and moved on. This was the third palette that I created. It was inspired by springtime, early springtime, when colors and flowers are just starting to bud and appear. The situation with this one is almost the opposite as for the Midwinter palette. I liked it a lot, and for a long time I was leaning towards using these colors in my cardigan, but the colors that were left over and that I would then have to use to work with the remaining projects and accessories, I felt not very excited by. So I moved on from this one too. And finally, the winner, ding ding ding, which I call Fall Break. It's inspired, as the name implies, by autumn colors, both the brighter colors that appear and those more earthy greens and browns that I really enjoy seeing in the fall. And I found this to be a good combination of the brighter colors and the more demure colors in the palette, and it also left me with a number of beautiful little balls of yarn to work with going forward. So this is what I ultimately chose to go with, even though I ended up switching out the bright pink to the top of the right to a more faded pink and changing places with the red color. That worked better when I was swatching.
So my fall or autumn palette that I ultimately went with features some rather bright colors, and back to the swatch, I don't think that it really reflected the feel and the impression of the actual garment because it's such a small sample. When there are so many colors, it's really hard to imagine. So this is what it looks like as a work in progress. It's knitted completely in garter stitch, which I'm really unused to. I think I have a shawl somewhere in garter stitch. Otherwise, stocking stitch or some lace is what I usually make. But it really works with this, both with the garment construction, but also I think with the colors, because the colors blend quite nicely in garter stitch. So even though, yes, it is striped, it kind of blends nicely. I'm moving it forwards and backwards so you can see it at different distances. And what I've noticed also is that the colors really pop in different ways, in different lights. Of course, light on the video always changes the colors a little bit, and they don't really maybe come into their own as one would wish. But I've noticed also, just if I'm by a window or if I have the lights on close to them or far away from them, if it's a sunny day or if it's not a sunny day, it really shows very differently. So I'm very happy with it, even though, like I said, these aren't really my go-to colors. So basically, it's knitted in one piece with raglan increases. Sorry, I'm not used to showing garments this way. And I have stitches resting for the sleeves. I'm still working on the torso, which, like I said, I'm making quite a bit longer. And then there's going to be a band along the back and along the fronts. And it's not going to be buttoned, it's just open or maybe fastened with a little brooch or a clasp or something like that. So even though the season is going to be all wrong when I finish this, I'm looking forward to using it. And if not sooner, when fall comes around again, I'll be ready to go. Now, a really exciting thing, I think, is that even when my posset cardigan is finished, I will have, what, 7 balls of yarn left from the Milwaukee Tweed collection, and what to do with the leftover yarns. I did discard one of my color combinations because I wasn't happy with the combination of colors that would be left over. I felt that would really limit me in the choice of smaller projects that I could make with the leftovers. So, like I said, Kate Davis in the Color Compass booklet had some examples of what could be made, but I am quite excited to actually make perhaps my own pattern for the leftover yarn. I lost my headband earlier this winter, which I had knitted. It was a double knitted in Angora and wool, light blue with little white dots on it, and I loved it so much, and I must have left it somewhere on the bus or something. Very, very sad. So I'm going to make myself a new headband. I am thinking I will make it in little diamond patterns, and the colors that I have left I think will go very nicely together. I have some of the light ones, my comfort colors, and I will practice combining them with some more adventurous ones. I don't know how many balls I can hold at the same time, but we'll see. That's something I might try out. I also have this one. It would go with them as well. So I hope to be able to show you in a few weeks how I'm coming along with that, and how I can develop a pattern that works. So that's it really for the color compass part of the podcast today. I'm having so much fun with these colors, even though, you know, I know that the results aren't going to be perfect. It's a learning curve and I'm just starting out, but I just find this, the whole exercise to be so inspiring and so engaging, and I feel like I can really incorporate creativity into my knitting. Knitting is always creative, of course, but I feel like this kind of adds a new dimension to it that I haven't worked with before. So if you have any particular ways that you like to work with color, change up patterns to make them feel like they go with your personal color preferences or your palette, please do share it with me, and I'll be very happy to learn from other experienced knitters out there. Now I will move on and talk a little bit about mittens. I am based in Sweden, and we have had some incredibly cold, little cold spells ever since October last year. Actually, we started off sometime in October with several degrees in the negative, which was shocking, a little bit shocking actually, and it's kind of continued going up and down. We've been down to negative 20 on the west coast, which is not incredibly common. Anyway, mitten weather to say the least, and I love knitting mittens. They're small, quite quick projects, and the variations are endless. So I've made quite a few, and I thought I would share 3 of them with you today. 3 of my favorites, which I've made at different points of my, I'm not going to say knitting career, but like knitting experience, if you will. And I think, like I said, I like all of them and I use all of them, but they really suit perhaps different skill levels and different preferences. One thing they do have in common is that they are all stranded colorwork mittens. I really like stranded colorwork, and in mittens, I mean, it's just, you see the results so quickly. It's so satisfying. So I will show you a few of them. Here is the first one. Okay, so these ones, they're called himlavantar in Swedish, sky mittens or heaven mittens, if you will. They're the first pair of mittens that I ever made, and they are from the Uppsala yarn store, Yll och Tyll, made in Rauma Finull. It's a Norwegian wool yarn. It's quite, it's not pretty soft, but it works very well for mittens, I think. So the construction of these mittens is really simple. If you're, maybe not entirely beginner knitter, but if you're not very experienced, it has a 2x2 elastic in the cuff, and the color work is calculated so that there are only ever 5 stitches between. So if you're not planning to be incredibly diligent in your knitting, you don't have to twist your yarn. You can just keep going. The thumb is also made in the simplest way by just putting some stitches on a thread and casting on some new ones behind, keeping going, and then knitting up the thumb. So this one I made, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. Like I said, I wasn't very used to it. You can see that the little, whatever you want to call them, stars or snowflakes, whatever you feel like, and whatever colors you choose, they may represent something different, but they're a little bit uneven. I still love them, and I use them a lot. They are made in 2mm and 2.5mm needles, so it's not the quickest knit, but I mean, they're mittens, so they're still quite fast to make. All right, on to the next pair. Right, these are the Felicia mittens, designed by Jenny Penny. I made them a couple of years ago. I think they are so pretty. They're made in an alpaca blend, I think. I don't have the banners left, in 2mm and 2.5mm needles, and they're really form-fitted to the hand. The sizing recommendations for these mittens is that if you want a different size, you can change your gauge, so you can just use larger needles. This is a technique that was entirely new to me until I just heard about it a few months ago, really. And it's so clever. It's so obvious too once you think about it, but I just had never thought about it. Right. So Jenny Penny, she's available on Ravelry. I'll put the link in the comments. And she has gorgeous mitten designs. She's quite well known in Sweden for her mitten designs, and she always sells them at like yarn festivals and crafts festivals. And every time I walk past the stand, I have to say to myself, no, I don't need these today. I don't need more mittens today. I don't need more mittens today, because they do take a while to knit, being quite intricate. And the thumb here is also the wedge thumb, so the fit is really good, and it looks pretty. You know, it looks pretty, and the fit is really nice. And it has the cuff, which has the double layer in an even smaller gauge, I reckon. So they were fun to make, but not quick to make. Those are the Felicia mittens, which I use a lot. So these ones I made just now in December. I don't actually remember what they're called, but they are the Christmas Mitten 2023 by the Swedish yarn and knitting design company Järbo. It's a free pattern available in English also on Ravelry. I'll put the link below, and it's designed by a woman named Maja Karlsson. She is a famous mitten designer who has also released books on the subject. And every year for the past 6 or 7 years, I'm not sure, she has had this collaboration with Järbo when it's a mystery knit along for mittens, the Christmas mittens. And on early in December, you get to know which material you need to buy. And on St. Lucia's Day, 13th of December, the first section of the pattern is released. This year, it was I'm not going to say a simple pattern because it has some really fun construction features, but the stranded color work itself is not that complicated. The thumb is the simple, the one which was the same for the sky mitten, where you just put some stitches on a thread and cast some new ones behind, so nothing difficult there. Also, the gauge is quite large, so this was knitted in 4mm and 5mm needles, so it was a quick knit in that way. Let's see. The features here is that it has you started with the cuff, knitted a few centimeters, and then knitted them together, so you get a nice little rounded edge. And then a cuff in fisherman's rib, which takes twice as long as regular rib, but it has, it looks really nice, and it's quite dense, so it warms you up really nicely. At first, I was a little bit reluctant to like them because the cuff is so wide, but it actually works very, very well to put on the outside of your coat, for example, which is in no way a bad thing. And I love making Latvian braids on mittens or sock cuffs. I also have a hat with a Latvian braid. I think it looks really decorative. And these little snowflakey stars are geometrical, simple to make, but yeah, I think they turned out nicely. I haven't blocked them, so they're a little bit uneven, but I use them frequently in the Arctic cold, which we've had recently. All right, that's all from me today. Thank you for joining me for the first episode of Bea's Knits. Like I said at the very start, I'll also talk about books and literature on my channel. So if you're into that, if you like books, why not join me in a couple of weeks when I'll talk about maybe Jane Austen, maybe Tolstoy. I haven't really decided yet. We'll see. Otherwise, the time after that, I'll talk more about knitting, and I hope to be able to show you a finished posset cardigan and some other exciting things I have in the pipeline. So I wish you a very nice day. See you then. Bye.